Satu Day, what's up, guys? So, as is more typical than atypical these days, we're busy with work. So, I got to I had some clips I recorded earlier the week, luckily. So, I'm in the middle of a ton of projects, which kind of sucks, but it's just how it is, right? So, uh, Will ended up sending me some knives. I got CJ's knives finished up and Mateo's knife up. I'm going to put a little clip in right here, and then it's kind of showing you more detail of what's going on. And I'm going to break down this RSK Orca here in a second. All right, so the progress with the fixed blade regrinds and whatnot. This was CJ's knife, and I finally got an edge put on it, but it's a little greased up right now. But that's pretty much the final product for CJ. So hopefully, CJ, you like it. I did have a problem putting edge on it with like real finely at the edge. It seemed like it was kind of sort of chipping out. So I'm kind of curious as how long the edge will hold and that sort of heat treat and that sort of thing. If I overheated it or the heat treat wasn't good to start with, but it did take a while to put this edge on this knife. But I'm really happy. This is regrind pretty much number one. So I'm really happy with how that one came out. And CJ, I'm gonna get this back to you. I'll get with you on Instagram and we'll figure out how to get it back to you as soon as possible. Thanks for loaning it in, man. I really appreciate you trusting me to try it anyhow. So this one is Mateo's. This is just a 511 VTAC. So I did the full hollow I showed you guys last week. This did have little thumb stud thingies right here, and it did have writing on the side of it. So I did a little belt brush, basically, 220 grit for the flats to kind of give it a different look. And then I just kind of rounded that like a full hologram, but just kind of twisting it out right there. And it did come back. The plunge line did come back and cover up the grips a little bit. And the main thing I learned with this one is it's not symmetrical, and the layout, I needed to lay out the lines better. So I thought I laid it out good, but there's a little unevenness with the tip. But all in all, looking at it, like for a first hologram regrind, I'm pretty happy with how that came out. So I think the brush flats was something else I picked up and learned. I like how to do that. But all like it's a cool little knife now. I think this is AUS 8, if I'm not mistaken, when I started working on it. But it's not really 100% sharp Mateo, so you probably need to put your edge on it. I mean, it'll cut paper, but it's not like the best edge or nothing like that. So same with you, CJ, that it's not the best edge, man. I wish I could have had more time to do better, but so those are those two knives. And then Will decided to loan me in some knives to do regrinds on, or trust me with knives to do regrinds on. So this is one of them. Nice little sheath with it too. I don't know who made any of these. You'd have to ask Will. I don't see any maker's mark on it, but this is like a Damascus and bone handle. It looks kind of like a handmade jobber. I don't know who made it or anything like that, so don't ask. I don't know. It does have some little slight rust forming here, so we're going to try to redo the whole thing, redo a grind on it, and then re-etch the whole Damascus thing and see how it turns out. So this will be a good experiment. So I've only done like one Damascus knife with re-etching before, so we'll see how this one turns out. I'm excited to do this one. This will be fun, I think. And then the other one that I think is going to be fun too that Will sent was this guy right here. I'm not even sure the maker of it. Maybe you guys know who that is. I don't know. Yeah, there you go. I don't know. I don't know whose that is. HX Outdoors, I think is what it says. So I don't know, but it's a funky tip. Like, you know, that's not a traditional style tip at all. And you can feel these ridges in between, especially this main bevel and this one. And you can see that how wide that bevel is. That's the final secondary bevel. You can see how broad of a grind this is. So I have plenty of meat to remove. This guy's good and thick, chunky boy. So I have plenty of meat to remove and make a decent little knife out of it. So I don't know. I'm thinking maybe Medford style, like Tonto flat ground and then hollow grind belly. I don't know. I might try something like that, but Will pretty much gave me the knife to do what I wanted to with it and just make something cool out of it. So hopefully that'll be that's always the mission, but hopefully it'll be something cool we can do with it. And then not really sure how we'll finish or refinish the flats, if he wants it brushed like that other one, or if he wants to keep this kind of a acidy stone wash. Maybe I'll brush it and then acid stone wash it for him. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I don't know if you want the numbers or you don't want the numbers, that sort of thing. So I don't know. I'll play with it, have fun with it, but I'm really excited about this project. So appreciate all the guys who sent knives in for me to do regrinds, and hopefully you all like them when they're done. All right, y'all, so as promised, I wanted to show you a little close-up since I didn't have time last week. This is the RSK Orca. Pretty much a beast of a knife. You can get a little bit closer look now. Maybe you can see some of these brass highlights in this area. I guess that's a bone or something. Buffalo bone or something. But just give it a quick spin around here. brass clip. So this one kind of sticks out like everything else is kind of patinaed except for this. This one isn't patinaed, so I don't know. I might do something to try to make that look all the same, but I figured like it's kind of not really an action knife. Like it's just more of like a look cool knife, and for me anyhow, I think it looks cool and it's something unusual. But I figured since we did the breakdown on the Alpha Hunter a couple weeks ago, we'll break down a handmade American knife, which handmade is always going to be different in production anyhow, but kind of maybe sort of see some things about this that will allude to not being made production, and also like the American versus Chinese, I guess, kind of thing. Not that I'm trying to make an issue out of it, but I'm gonna go ahead and do a breakdown for it anyhow. Who cares? Because I've never had this apart, so I have no clue what to expect other than I have tested it for size. So that's a T20 pivot and then T10 for the other screws. So bear with me a minute. I know this is like kind of boring to see people break down knives. Some people really like it, some people don't like it, but just bear with me a minute and I'll try to get through it as quick as possible. But this knife overall is really cool. Like for me, I like the uniqueness of it, and I think that's what I'm drawn to more than anything else. So flow all the way through. Let me show you real quick, just in case you weren't sure. So it goes all the way through the backspacer. So the backspacer is just a hole. It's not tapped. It's brass, so it's soft. You wouldn't want to do that. And they tap this titanium side, and it's actually threaded into the titanium. You can see this other screw right here, how it did that. So this construction is very, I guess, common for the handmade type people. People that make handmade customs, they do a lot of that because it's easier just to tap titanium than it is to make another set of hardware with a threaded piece or a pin or whatever else. But it's also not as strong too. So if you notice too, everybody's got different ways of doing stuff. How I always do it is I put these screws in the same position where they came out. I want the exact screw to go in the exact same position if possible, just to make sure that nothing gets mixed up. And a lot of times thread wise stuff too, like, you know, it's just easier to do it all, make it all consistent. I have no idea what it looks like on the inside of this, so I'm kind of excited to see what it looks like myself. So like I thought, pivot collar, just brass, nothing special there. All right, here we go. Look how little those bearings are. Holy crap, look how small that little bearing is. All right, so as I was alluding to before, so just through the backspacer, not tapped. So typically on Chinese, you'd see the standoffs come through here. What those do is locate from a pin, so they'd counterbore both sides of this, so the pin would locate it and make it much more strong where it can't possibly do this motion at all or this motion at all. When you got those threaded standoffs coming through here, you're basically clearance for this screw. So you have this much walk around on that screw so you can change position. So it's good if you're not aligned or not perfectly flat and square. You can align it, but also lose a little bit of strength that way from that, obviously. So look at those little bearings. Holy crap, look how small those bearings are. So another thing too is, I just lost my stop pin, sorry about that. So did I lose the screw for the hardware? Oh no, it went through, that's right, okay. The other thing I want to point out too is the diameter of this stop pin is 80, or not stop pin, pivot, is itty bitty, right? So typically on an overbuilt knife, you'd have a much bigger pivot, and if you're going to use a washer, you use a much broader washer. I'm saying washer, but I meant bearing. But you see the diameter, how small it is in relation to the blade, like that's pretty thin. So like structurally wise, and you can see this is a hollow, I don't know if you can see this, not hollowed out. Basically it's threaded all the way in, so that basically you have a screw from the other side and a screw from this side, and this is basically a hollow standoff, which is what I was talking about using for back here. This is what I like to see back here, not necessarily as a pivot. So that's kind of a little bit more on the not desirable side of things. So it just is what it is. Just part of the construction, right? It's not going to hurt anything unless you're really actually putting the knife to use and using it. But you can see what I'm talking about here. It's just that standoff with that screw already screwed to it, so, or screwed into it. Not much in the way of bearings, that's for sure. But this thing ran okay as far as like it didn't function bad. Typically what I like to do on my bruisers, if I can't see air, I want to see air. Me personally, I want to see air between the bottom of this lock bar and the frame, if that makes sense. I want to see a little bit of gap of air right there. So I know this lock bar can go all the way over to lock up. So as it is right now, the thickness of the blade, and I'm just going to lay it on here so it makes sense. See if this makes sense this way. There we go. You see the thickness of the blade? That's as far as the tang would go. So it won't fully lock up, right? If that makes sense. So me, typically, I like a lot more lock bar pressure than most people. Some people like to tune for drop shut or whatever. So I'm going to take this and expand it a little more. The other thing I've noticed by having this is that this right here is kind of a hot spot. It doesn't seem like it would be, this little area right here. But while it's apart, I'm going to go ahead and smooth that out a little bit, make it a little more to my take, so this is not really a hot spot when I'm disengaging. I don't disengage with my thumb. I typically roll it over and do it with my fingers, and this is just right there, and that's one spot that's kind of like not the best for my fingers. It just kind of hits me in a wrong spot. If you had different size hands or used your thumb, it probably wouldn't affect you at all. So finish wise versus Japanese style, or I'm Japanese, I keep saying Japanese, but I mean Chinese style knives. You can see you got a hole here and a hole here. So what he's typically doing is going to draw a clearance hole. So if you look at it really close, let me see if I can get it really close on this so you can kind of see. Focus. All right, it's not focusing. But if you look at this hole right here, in the straight across into this hole, you can see how that diameter is not perfectly centered in that slot. So it's a clearance hole. So when he lined it up on the mill, I don't know what he did to line it up, but this is basically sawed. It's like they use a jeweler saw or something. So it's not like an EDM. It's like an arbor with a jeweler saw or woodruff cutter or whatever you want to call it. That's cutting both these open. So the process here is different than EDM. It's done differently, and you can tell by looking at it that it's not done with EDM. It's just a different finish inside all of it, and that's the reason why you have the holes here. Is basically clearance so that blade can come through. So you got a much larger diameter blade. I don't know if this makes sense or not, but construction-wise, you can see this is not a production knife. This is a custom knife, because production you wouldn't go through all these steps to do this production-wise. It'd definitely be different. So finish level-wise, like as far as like the actual finish on it, everything looks good, but as I alluded to with the Chinese knife, that Alpha Hunter that I was looking at, like there's no flaws. If you look at those things, you can't find tooling marks and that sort of thing. And I'm not seeing a ton of anything as far as tooling marks go. It looks like everything's cleaned up pretty good, but the finish is not what these lines are here a little washy. So they've got little burrs on them in here. They're not very big, but little burrs up in these. Same with there. Like you can find little details here and there of all customs. Little tooling marks back in here. Let's see if I can get this in camera. I don't know if I can or not. Suck today. But anyway, that's just a quick comparison, like on just from the frame side alone. The locking side, so the scale side, there are noticeable gaps here. You know, you can feel that. Could it be worked in and make it feel differently? I'm sure it could. I've never tried to do dissimilar materials like this, so you can see my fingernail catching right there. So this brass is a little bit higher than the titanium, and this buffalo horn is pretty close to even, but it's not dead nuts even. You can definitely feel like on this corner right here, it drags right here. So it could be finished better. Same here. So you could finish that better. And that's typically what you see more of the Chinese knives, is that fit and finish is just a little bit better. Having said that, this is a no CNC knife, right? So all these chamfers, you see how nice and even this line is all the way across, all done by hand. I'm sure he has some kind of jig to lay it out, and see how even this I mean, this is getting a little, see the tapered end right here? This is how you can tell it's not machined. See how it's tapered, it's thinner here than it is here? Typical, right? You're never going to see a machine do a weird movement like that. It's all going to be consistent, unless the part's warped or something. But typically, this is what you see right here is a good another example. See thick, thin, a little bit thin right here. It's a little bit thicker, not exactly crisp, but all done by hand. So you can see the talent of doing it by hand is a whole lot different than doing it by a machine. Let's look at the blade for a second. So I'm basic in the knife grinding, right? I'm nobody, so don't take this as oh, I'm an authority. I'm definitely not an authority. But if you look at how this blend is, and it's not coming down square, it's not coming down straight like this, it's coming at an angle and then going back. The only way I know how to achieve that personally is using the side of the wheel. So the plunge is all done by hand and all hand done. Like to do this by machine, it would take like programming it almost 5 axis to be able to do that with a machine. You could probably 3D mill most of that, but I don't know, it's never going to really look the same as this. This is all done by hand. So how he chose to do the grind lines and stuff, like this is typical of what's done by hand. I don't know if you can see it real good with the blade being what it is, but hopefully you can see what I'm talking about through this plunge line, how it's plunged at a different angle. It's coming this way and up and in, and it's kind of washed out a little bit with this grind too. This grind's coming in this way. But definitely done by hand. You can definitely tell it's a hand ground knife versus a machine ground knife if you look at it like that. So typically too, you can look at these like detent holes. See if you look at this hole, focus. like a precision milled hole. Not saying this is not, but like it looks like it has a little bit of walk, like it walked around. It looks like someone just drilled it. If I'm doing this on a CNC, I would typically rough it. Me personally, I would probably rough it with a drill and come back with an end mill and make a perfectly round hole how I wanted to do it. That's how everybody's got different ways of doing it, but that's probably how I would have achieved this. Also in the pockets, you see that the acid from the Damascus blade, he didn't take the etch off it, how it's rough inside that. Inside the pivot itself, which you guys can't really see, but it's also that same etch. It's not smooth inside that pivot. So these are just little small details that you can see from a Damascus blade, a handmade blade versus a production blade. So a lot of differences there. So I just wanted to blow it apart, let you guys see it. I'm gonna put it back together in a minute and kind of give you my final thoughts. All right, summing this one up. Ton of projects in the work, but let's see. So the takeaways from the Orca disassembly and discussion, whatever we did a minute ago, is the overall hand fit of this knife is really good. The construction is not necessarily what I typically like in a bruiser, so this is kind of sort of a little bit on the not quite what I like as far as construction, but still a damn good knife. I did tighten the lock bar a little bit. It did make the action a little worse, but it's not really an action knife anyhow. And then the little ridge I showed you that was in this side over here. Let's see if I can make it where you can see it. You can't really. But anyway, I smoothed that little ridge out so it doesn't hurt my hand anymore. But it took 10 seconds. Trying to make stop pins for Mateo and whoever else. But I ran out of stock. So Mateo, I'm gonna probably get you to send me your sawtooth and I'll fit a stop pin for it to make it as much early lockup as I can get away with. But I have to typically have those here so I can measure it really close. I got this one back from Billy, which is the dire wear, and then upon getting it back, I decided I wanted to redo the thumb stud, so I got this one halfway in the works of trying to redo that thumb stud stop pin thing. My Scorpion 6, I think it's called a combat folder or something like that. This always bugs me, and I don't know why, but this is just not, I'm not a fan of this. I'm not sure about the bars either. They may or may not stay, but I'm probably going to do standoffs. I've got some working right now, so I'm probably going to do standoffs for it. I might just modify the backspacer eventually. I don't know. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I haven't really decided, but I'm going to do something to modify this one because it's not quite to my liking as it is right now. What else is going on here? Next week, I'm going to try to do a collection video. I've got one or two more floating around that are coming in. Should be here this week if everything goes right. And then it should be the whole collection, which I don't think I've ever done in all my other collection videos. I don't think I've ever had the whole collection here when I did the collection video. So I think that'll be cool. And it's Labor Day weekend, so it'll probably be epic length. So if this one's not long enough for your desires, stand by for next week. I apologize. I got to kind of keep it moving, but the work's calling, man. You know how it is, man. Slaves to the dollar. We all are. So I got to go to work. Y'all be cool. Y'all have a great week. See you in Labor Day weekend from the collection video, all right? Later, y'all.